Daniel Carter's phone screamed at 11:47 p.m., a number he didn't recognize lighting up the darkness of his kitchen. He should have let it ring, should have protected the quiet refuge he'd built for himself and his daughter over the past 7 years. But something made him answer. And when he heard that voice, broken, desperate, unmistakable, every carefully constructed wall he'd built around his heart cracked wide open. Daniel, I didn't know who else to call. Clara Bennett, the woman he'd loved in silence, the woman who married someone else, the woman who was supposed to be living her perfect life across town. Stay with me until the very end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey reaches. The dish soap was still on Daniel's hands when the phone rang. He'd been standing at the sink, staring through his own faint reflection in the kitchen window, watching the suburban street settle into its nightly quiet. The houses across the way had gone dark one by one, their inhabitants retreating into whatever versions of peace or chaos lived behind closed doors. His daughter Mia was asleep upstairs, her nightlight casting its soft glow beneath her bedroom door, the same routine they'd followed every night for the past 7 years. 7 years since everything had fallen apart. 7 years since he'd rebuilt his life into something manageable, predictable, safe. The phone's vibration against the granite countertop shattered that carefully maintained silence. Daniel glanced at the screen. Unknown number. His first instinct was to ignore it. Nothing good came from unknown numbers at this hour. Scam calls. Wrong numbers. Occasionally a drunk acquaintance who'd found his contact information somewhere and decided midnight was the perfect time to reconnect. But his thumb hovered over the decline button for just a moment too long. And in that hesitation, something shifted. Some inexplicable pull he couldn't name made him swipe to answer. Hello? The silence on the other end stretched long enough that he almost hung up. Then he heard breathing, shallow, uneven, fighting for control. Daniel? His entire body went rigid. He knew that voice. He'd know it anywhere, even after all these years, even broken and trembling the way it was now. Clara? I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have called. I know it's been... I didn't know who else. Her words dissolved into something between a sob and a gasp. Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. Clara, where are you? What's wrong? She paused, and he could hear her trying to steady herself. I'm outside my house. He changed the locks. He took my keys and changed the locks, and I have nowhere to go, and I just... Where? Daniel was already moving, grabbing his jacket from the hook by the door, shoving his feet into shoes. Tell me where you are. Daniel, I can't ask you to seek. You're not asking, I'm telling you. Where are you? The address she gave him was on the other side of town, in one of those pristine developments where every house looked like it had stepped out of a magazine spread. 20 minutes away, maybe 15 if he pushed it. Stay on the phone with me, he said, already heading for the stairs. I need to check on Mia, then I'm coming to get you. I'm so sorry, Clara whispered. Don't. Just stay where you are. He took the stairs 2 at a time, moving as quietly as he could down the hallway to his daughter's room, pushing the door open just enough to see her small form curled beneath her covers, her breathing deep and even. The nightlight painted dancing shadows of stars across her ceiling, the same stars she insisted on every single night. 7 years old, the same age he'd been when his own father had walked out. He'd sworn he'd never do that to her, never let chaos touch her life the way it had touched his. But standing there in her doorway, phone pressed to his ear, listening to Clara's shaky breathing on the other end of the line, Daniel felt the careful architecture of his existence beginning to shift. Mia's asleep, he said softly, pulling her door almost closed. My neighbor Beth can come over. She's watched Mia before. Daniel, you don't have to. Yes, I do. He didn't know why he said it with such certainty. Didn't know why his body was already moving on autopilot, sending a quick text to Beth, grabbing his wallet and keys. 10 years. It had been 10 years since he'd last seen Clara Bennett. 10 years since she'd smiled at him across a crowded graduation party and told him she was engaged. 10 years since he'd swallowed every feeling he'd ever had for her and wished her well. Beth's response came through almost immediately. On my way. Everything okay? Emergency. I'll explain later. The doorbell rang less than 3 minutes later. Beth stood on his porch in her bathrobe, her gray hair pulled back, her expression alert despite the hour. Mia's asleep, Daniel said quickly. She shouldn't wake up, but if she does, I've got her, Daniel. Go. Beth's eyes searched his face with the kind of knowing concern that came from living next door to someone for 7 years and paying attention. Be careful. He was in his truck before he could second-guess himself, phone back to his ear. Clara, I'm on my way. Talk to me. Are you safe? Yes. I'm sitting in my car. He doesn't know I'm still here. I parked down the street. He? Your husband? The word tasted bitter in Daniel's mouth. Marcus Bennett. Successful real estate developer. Member of the country club. The kind of man who wore success like armor. The kind of man Clara had chosen instead of him. Not that Daniel had ever given her the choice. Not that he'd ever had the courage to speak. We had a fight, Clara said, her voice hollow now, drained of the initial panic. A bad one. He told me I was ungrateful, that everything I have is because of him, that I should remember my place. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Your place? He's been saying things like that for a while now, but tonight he actually locked me out, told me to figure out what I was worth without him. A bitter laugh. Turns out not much. I called my sister. She said she couldn't get involved in marital disputes. My parents are in Florida and they'd just tell me to go apologize. And my friends... She stopped. They're all his friends, really. I realized I don't actually have anyone who's just mine. Daniel navigated through the empty streets, the traffic lights blinking yellow in the late-night quiet. You have me. Silence. Then so quietly he almost missed it. Why? What? Why are you doing this? We haven't spoken in a decade, Daniel. You don't owe me anything. He could have given her the easy answer, could have said something about common decency, about helping a friend in need, about doing the right thing. Instead, he told her the truth. Because when I saw your name on my phone, the first thing I felt was relief that you were still in the world and able to call me. Everything else is just details. He heard her breath catch, heard the kind of silence that was full of words neither of them knew how to speak. I'm turning onto your street now, he said. What does your car look like? Silver sedan, 4 houses down on the left. He spotted it immediately, parked beneath the streetlight's pale glow. As he pulled up behind it, he could see her silhouette in the driver's seat, her head bowed, her shoulders curved inward like she was trying to disappear. Daniel killed the engine and walked to her car. She looked up as he approached, and even in the dim light, he could see the tracks of tears on her face, the way her hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel. She was just as beautiful as he remembered. More, maybe. There was something in her face now that hadn't been there at 22, a depth that came from living, from surviving, from carrying weight that shouldn't have been hers to carry alone. She unlocked the door and he pulled it open. Hi, he said softly. Hi. She tried to smile, but it fractured halfway through. I must look like a disaster. You look like someone who's had a terrible night. Come on, let's get you somewhere warm. She gathered her purse, apparently the only thing she'd managed to grab before being locked out, and stepped out of the car. She was wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy knot. No jewelry except for the wedding ring that caught the streetlight as she moved. They stood there for a moment, 3 feet apart, the distance feeling both vast and negligible. Thank you, Claire said. I'll figure something out tomorrow. A hotel or something. I just needed... You're coming home with me, Daniel said. We'll figure out the rest later. Daniel, I can't impose like that. You're not imposing. You're accepting help. There's a difference. He gestured toward his truck, and after a moment's hesitation, she followed him. The drive back across town was quiet at first, the kind of silence that held too many years and too many unspoken things. How have you been? Clara asked finally, her voice tentative. I heard about your wife. I'm sorry. I should have reached out, but I didn't know if... It's okay, Daniel said. It was a long time ago. Car accident. She was 7 months pregnant with our second. The words came out flat, rehearsed from years of having to explain. Mia survived, obviously. Miracle, they said. I stopped believing in those after that. Oh, Daniel, Clara's voice broke around his name. We got through it. We're okay now. Different, but okay. How old is she? Mia? 7. Just started second grade. She's smart as hell and completely fearless. Terrifies me daily. That got a real laugh from Clara, soft but genuine. She sounds wonderful. She is. She's the reason I get up every morning. He glanced at her. What about you? What's your life been like? The laugh died. That's a longer conversation. We've got time. They did. The drive stretched out before them, the city lights giving way to the quieter suburban streets that led to Daniel's neighborhood. Claire was quiet for a long moment, and he didn't push, just drove, giving her the space to find her words. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she said finally. When Marcus and I got married, I genuinely believed we were building something together. He was successful, ambitious, confident. All the things I thought I needed. All the things that seemed important at 22. And now? Now I realize I married someone who wanted a wife the way you want an accessory. Something that looks good, that enhances your image, that stays in its proper place. Her voice hardened. I haven't worked in 8 years. He convinced me to quit my job right after the wedding. Said it didn't make sense for his wife to be working retail when he could provide everything we needed. And I believed him. I thought it was romantic. Daniel felt anger coiling in his chest, hot and protective. It was control. Yes, but I didn't see it then. I saw a man who wanted to take care of me. By the time I realized what I'd given up, my independence, my friends, my sense of who I was outside of being Marcus Bennett's wife, it felt too late to get it back. It's never too late. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something in her expression made his breath catch. When did you get so sure of everything? When I had to be. When there was a tiny human depending on me to have answers. He pulled into his driveway, the porch light casting warm yellow light across the front of his modest 2-story house. Nothing like the mansions in Clara's neighborhood, but it was home. It was theirs. Come on, let's get you inside. Beth met them at the door, her eyes widening slightly when she saw Clara, but to her credit, she didn't ask questions. Mia's still sleeping, Beth said quietly. Everything okay here? Yes, thank you, Beth. I owe you. You owe me nothing, but I expect coffee and an explanation sometime this week. She squeezed his arm, nodded politely to Clara, and headed back to her own house. Daniel closed the door behind them, and suddenly the house felt different. Smaller. More alive. Clara stood in his entryway looking around at the lived-in chaos that he'd stopped noticing years ago. Mia's sneakers kicked off by the stairs, her backpack hanging from a hook, drawings taped to the fridge, dishes still in the drying rack. It's not much, he said. It's perfect, Clara replied softly. It feels like a home. Something in the way she said it, like she'd forgotten what that felt like, made Daniel's chest ache. Come on, I'll show you the guest room. It's small, but it's clean. Towels are in the closet. You can shower if you want. Get some rest. He led her upstairs, past Mia's door with its hand-painted name sign, to the room at the end of the hall. It was simple. A double bed, a dresser, a window that looked out over the backyard. He'd been using it for storage mostly, but it was functional. This is great, Claire said. Really? Thank you. I'll grab you some clothes. They'll be too big, but at least they'll be comfortable. He returned a moment later with sweatpants and a t-shirt, setting them on the bed. Clara stood by the window, her arms wrapped around herself, looking smaller and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. Daniel? Yeah? Why didn't you ever say anything? Back then, I mean. Before Marcus. The question hit him like a physical blow. He'd spent 10 years making sure no one ever asked him that question, especially not her. I don't know what you mean, he said, but the words rang hollow. Yes, you do. She turned to face him. Everyone else saw it. Sarah used to tell me all the time, Daniel looks at you like you hung the moon. I told her she was imagining things, but she wasn't, was she? Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, every instinct screaming at him to deflect, to protect himself the way he'd learned to protect himself from disappointment. But then he looked at her face, at the exhaustion there, at the fragile hope, and he couldn't do it. No, he said quietly. She wasn't imagining things. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Then why? Because you deserved better than me. You deserved someone who had their life together, who could give you everything you wanted. I was working 2 jobs just to pay rent, Clara. I had nothing to offer you except feelings I didn't know how to articulate. I never cared about any of that. I know, but I did. He leaned against the doorframe, years of buried regret rising to the surface. And by the time I realized that maybe I should have just been honest with you, you were already engaged to Marcus. Already building that perfect life I thought you wanted. It wasn't perfect, Clara whispered. It was never perfect. I know that now. They stood there in the quiet of the guest room, 10 years of what-ifs hanging between them like smoke. I should let you get some rest, Daniel said finally. We can talk more tomorrow, figure out next steps. Next steps. Claire repeated the words like they were foreign. I don't even know what those are anymore. That's okay. We'll figure it out together. She nodded, wiping at her eyes. Daniel? I'm really glad you answered the phone. Me too. He pulled the door closed behind him and stood in the hallway for a long moment, trying to process everything that had just happened. Clara Bennett was sleeping in his guest room. The woman he'd loved and lost without ever really having her was 20 feet away, her life in pieces, turning to him for help, and he had absolutely no idea what came next. Downstairs, he made himself tea he didn't drink and sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing. The house had settled back into its nighttime quiet, but everything felt different now, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. His phone buzzed, a text from Beth. That was Clara Bennett, wasn't it? From college? Daniel typed back. Yes. The one you never got over? He stared at the question for a long time before answering. Yes. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, be careful with your heart, Daniel, and hers. I will. But even as he sent the message, he knew it was probably a lie. Because when it came to Clara Bennett, he'd never been careful. He'd been careful with everyone and everything else in his life. Careful with Mia, careful with his career, careful with his routine and his boundaries and his heart, but not with her. Never with her. Upstairs, he heard the shower turn on, heard the pipes creak the way they always did, heard the sounds of someone else living in his space, disrupting the careful silence he'd maintained for 7 years. And instead of feeling invaded, he felt something else entirely. He felt awake. For the first time in years, Daniel Carter felt completely, terrifyingly awake. The shower shut off. He heard footsteps across the guest room floor, heard the bed creak as she settled in, and then finally, silence again. But it was a different kind of silence now, the kind that held breath and possibility, the kind that promised nothing would be the same when morning came. Daniel sat in his kitchen until the first gray light of dawn began to seep through the windows, thinking about phone calls that shattered everything, about second chances that arrived in the middle of the night, about all the words he'd never said, and all the ways life could pivot on a single moment of courage. Upstairs in the room where Clara slept, her phone sat silent on the nightstand. No calls from Marcus, no messages asking where she was or if she was safe. Just silence. The kind that spoke volumes about the marriage she'd finally walked away from. And in Mia's room, the nightlight continued to paint stars across the ceiling. The little girl dreaming of whatever 7-year-olds dream about, completely unaware that when she woke up, their world would be different. That sometimes people from the past show up in the middle of the night. That sometimes fathers do brave things that terrify them. That sometimes the story you thought ended years ago is actually just beginning. The sun rose slowly over the suburbs, painting everything in shades of gold and possibility. And in a modest house on a quiet street, 3 lives hung suspended in that delicate moment before everything changes, before the questions get asked, before the hard conversations begin, before courage gets tested and hearts get risked and choices get made that can't be unmade. But for now, in these last quiet moments before morning officially arrived, there was just this. A man who'd answered a call when he could have let it ring. A woman who'd reached out when she could have suffered alone. And a sleeping child whose life was about to expand to include something she didn't know she needed. The beginning of something, the end of something else. The moment when the past and the future collide, and everything you thought you knew gets rewritten. Daniel finally went upstairs as the sun cleared the horizon. He paused outside Clara's door, heard her breathing, soft and even. Asleep. Safe. Here. Then he walked to his own room and lay down on top of the covers, still fully dressed, staring at the ceiling the way he'd done 1,000 nights before. But this time, he wasn't alone. This time, everything was different. This time, he had absolutely no idea what morning would bring. And somehow, impossibly, that felt exactly right. Daniel woke to the sound of small feet thundering down the hallway. His eyes snapped open, his body jerking upright with the disoriented panic of someone who'd fallen asleep in their clothes. Sunlight streamed through his bedroom window, far brighter than it should have been. He grabbed his phone from the nightstand. 8:47 a.m. He never slept past 6:30. "Daddy!" Mia burst through his door, her dark hair wild around her face, still in her pajamas decorated with cartoon dinosaurs. "Why is there a lady in the guest room?" Daniel's heart stopped. He'd been so consumed with his own thoughts last night that he hadn't prepared for this moment, hadn't thought through how to explain Clara's presence to his daughter. "Mia, I need you to use your inside voice, okay? Our guest is probably still sleeping." "But who is she?" Mia climbed onto his bed, her brown eyes wide with curiosity. "Is she your friend? Does she live here now? Can I meet her?" "She's an old friend who needed a place to stay for a little while. And yes, you can meet her, but we need to give her some space this morning. She had a really hard night." Mia processed this with the serious expression she always wore when thinking through something important. At 7 years old, she'd already developed a frighteningly accurate instinct for reading emotional undercurrents. "Was she sad?" Mia asked. "Yeah, baby. She was pretty sad." "Then we should make her breakfast. Breakfast always makes me feel better when I'm sad." Daniel felt his chest tighten with love for this small, fierce, empathetic human he'd somehow gotten lucky enough to raise. "That's a great idea. What should we make?" "Pancakes with chocolate chips. Nobody can be sad when there's chocolate chip pancakes." "Okay, but you have to be quiet while we cook. Deal?" "Deal." Mia held out her pinky finger, and Daniel hooked it with his own, sealing their agreement the way they always did. They made their way downstairs, Mia's bare feet padding softly on the steps. In the kitchen, Daniel pulled out the pancake ingredients while Mia climbed onto her step stool at the counter, ready to help the way she always did on weekend mornings. This was their routine, their sacred Saturday ritual, and now Clara was upstairs, a complication he hadn't factored into the careful ecosystem of his life with Mia. "Can I crack the eggs?" Mia asked. "2 eggs, and try not to get shells in the bowl this time." She stuck her tongue out in concentration as she cracked the first egg, fishing out a small piece of shell with her finger. "Oops." "It's okay. You're getting better." They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, mixing batter, heating the griddle. Mia insisted on adding extra chocolate chips, dumping in a handful that was definitely more than the recipe called for. "Remember, we're making breakfast for 3 people, Daniel reminded her. "I know. That's why I'm adding extra, so everyone gets enough chocolate." He couldn't argue with that logic. The pancakes were nearly done when he heard footsteps on the stairs. He turned to see Clara standing in the doorway, wearing the clothes he'd given her last night, her hair damp from a shower, her face clean of makeup and exhaustion. She looked younger somehow, vulnerable. "Good morning," she said quietly. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sleep so late. I should probably—" "You're just in time for breakfast," Daniel said before she could finish the thought. Mia insisted. Mia whipped around, her eyes going wide. "Hi, I'm Mia. I'm 7, and I'm in 2nd grade, and I like dinosaurs and soccer and reading, and I made pancakes with extra chocolate chips because Daddy said you were sad and chocolate makes everything better." Clara's expression softened into something that might have been the first genuine smile Daniel had seen from her in 10 years. "Hi, Mia. I'm Clara, and you're absolutely right about chocolate. Thank you for making breakfast. You can sit there." Mia pointed to one of the chairs at the kitchen table. "That's the good chair because you can see out the window and watch the birds. We have a cardinal that comes sometimes. His name is Steve." "You named the cardinal Steve?" Clara asked, moving to the designated chair. "Yeah, he looks like a Steve." Daniel plated the pancakes, setting them on the table along with syrup and butter. Mia immediately claimed the stack with the most chocolate chips, which was fine because Daniel had deliberately made that one for her anyway. They ate in a silence that was almost comfortable, broken only by Mia's running commentary about school, her teacher Mrs. Peterson, and the injustice of having to learn multiplication when addition was already hard enough. Clara listened with the kind of attention that made Mia light up, asking questions in all the right places, laughing at Mia's jokes even when they didn't quite land. "You're really good with her," Daniel said quietly when Mia ran upstairs to get dressed. "She's easy to be good with. She's wonderful, Daniel." "She is. She's the best thing that ever happened to me." He paused, gathering his coffee mug in both hands. "So, we should probably talk about what happens next." Clara's smile faded. "Right. I should figure out a hotel. Maybe call a lawyer. I don't even know where to start." "Start with coffee and a plan. You don't have to rush out of here, Clara. Take the day. Figure out what you need." "I can't keep imposing." "You're not imposing. You're regrouping." He met her eyes across the table. "What do you want to do? Not what you think you should do. What do you actually want?" She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug. "I want to never go back to that house. I want to wake up tomorrow and not feel like I'm suffocating. I want to remember what it feels like to make my own decisions." "Okay, then that's where we start." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Mia came thundering back down the stairs, now dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt with a glittery unicorn on it. Can Clara come to the park with us? Please. We always go to the park on Saturdays, and she could come and see the swings and the climbing wall, and maybe Steve will be there." Daniel looked at Clara, giving her an out if she needed it. "You don't have to." "I'd love to," Clara said, and the surprise in her own voice suggested she meant it. So that's how Daniel found himself walking to the neighborhood park with his daughter and the woman he'd never gotten over, the autumn morning crisp and bright around them. Mia ran ahead, her energy boundless, stopping every few feet to show Clara something she deemed important. A particularly interesting rock, a caterpillar crossing the sidewalk, the house where her friend Emma lived. "She's never met a stranger, has she?" Clara observed. "No, she trusts everyone completely. It terrifies me." Daniel shoved his hands in his pockets. "I keep waiting for the world to teach her to be more careful. But then I think maybe she's got the right idea. Maybe I'm the one who's too guarded. Being careful isn't always wrong. Sometimes it's survival." They reached the park, and Mia immediately made a beeline for the swings. "Push me, Daddy! Push me so high I can touch the sky!" Daniel jogged over, settling into the familiar rhythm of pushing his daughter on the swings, listening to her shriek with delight each time she reached the apex. Clara sat on a nearby bench, watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. After a while, Mia abandoned the swings for the climbing structure, where she immediately found two other kids to play with. Daniel sat down next to Clara, both of them keeping watch over Mia as she navigated the maze of platforms and slides. "She looks just like you," Clara said. "Same eyes, same smile. She's got her mother's fearlessness. Rachel would climb anything, try anything. She lived like she was invincible." His throat tightened. "Right up until she wasn't. I can't imagine what that was like. Losing her and becoming a single parent in the same moment. It was survival mode for a long time. Beth next door basically moved in for the first 6 months. I don't think I slept more than 2 hours at a time. Mia had colic, and I had no idea what I was doing, and everything hurt all the time." He paused. "But we figured it out. Day by day, we figured it out." "You did more than figure it out. You built something beautiful." Daniel turned to look at her. "What about you? What did you build?" Clara's laugh was hollow. "An illusion. A beautiful, expensive illusion." She pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. "Do you want to know the worst part? I didn't even realize how bad it had gotten until last night. I genuinely thought if I just tried harder, was more understanding, more patient, more whatever he needed me to be, that eventually it would get better. That's not how it works with people like him. I know that now." She rested her chin on her knees. "The fight last night started because I suggested I might want to go back to work. Nothing serious, just part-time at a bookstore or something. I'm so bored, Daniel. I spend my days in that huge empty house, and I have nothing to do except exist as evidence of Marcus's success." "What did he say?" "He laughed, actually laughed in my face, said that his wife didn't need to work, that it would make him look like he couldn't provide. And when I pushed back, when I said it wasn't about the money but about having something that was mine," her voice cracked. "He told me nothing was mine, that everything I had, everything I was because he allowed it." Rage simmered hot in Daniel's chest. "Clara! And the terrible thing is, he was right. I gave him that power. I let him take everything, my job, my independence, my sense of self. I walked into that cage and I closed the door myself. No, he manipulated you into that cage. There's a difference. She turned to look at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Why are you being so nice to me? I called you in the middle of the night after 10 years of silence. I dragged you into my mess. And you're just here like it's the most natural thing in the world. Daniel watched Mia on the climbing structure, her laughter carrying across the playground. You want the honest answer? Always. Because watching you walk away with him 10 years ago was one of the hardest things I ever did. And getting a chance to actually help you now, to be here when you need someone. He met her eyes. I'm not letting you go through this alone, not this time. Clara's breath caught. Daniel? Daddy, watch this! Mia's voice cut through the moment. She was hanging upside down from the monkey bars, her face red with the rush of blood to her head. Very impressive, Daniel called back. Don't fall. I won't. I'm basically a professional. Clara laughed through her tears, wiping at her face. She really is fearless. She is, and maybe that's not a bad thing to be. They stayed at the park for another hour, Mia playing with relentless energy while Daniel and Clara talked through logistics. She'd need to get her car from the old neighborhood, need to contact a lawyer, eventually need to face Marcus and figure out the details of separation. I don't have money of my own, Clara admitted. Everything's in joint accounts that I'm sure he's already frozen. We'll figure it out. Beth's daughter is a lawyer, family law. I'll call her. Daniel, I can't afford. First consultation is usually free, and even if it's not, we'll work something out. He stood up as Mia ran over, her cheeks flushed from exertion. Ready to head back, kiddo? Can we get ice cream on the way? It's barely noon. But Clara's here and ice cream is special, and this is a special day. Daniel looked at Clara, who was smiling despite everything. Ice cream it is. They stopped at the small shop 3 blocks from the house, Mia ordering her usual, strawberry with rainbow sprinkles, while Clara got vanilla and Daniel stuck with chocolate. They ate on the walk home, Mia chattering between licks about her upcoming birthday party, the book report she had to write, and whether dragons could be real if we just believed hard enough. Back at the house, Mia settled in front of the TV for her allotted hour of screen time, giving Daniel and Clara space to talk in the kitchen. I should get my car today, Clara said, before Marcus decides to have it towed or something equally petty. I'll drive you over. Mia can stay with Beth. Are you sure? I don't want to keep disrupting your day. Clara. Daniel turned to face her fully. You need to stop apologizing for existing. You're here. You need help. I'm offering it. That's all there is to it. She studied his face for a long moment. You really mean that? I really do. 20 minutes later, they were in Daniel's truck, driving back toward the pristine development where Clara's car still sat on the street. The neighborhood looked even more intimidating in daylight. Enormous houses with manicured lawns, luxury cars in every driveway, the kind of wealth that whispered rather than shouted. Which one is yours? Daniel asked. Clara pointed to a house at the end of a cul-de-sac, a sprawling modern structure with too many windows and not enough warmth. The white one with the black trim. Daniel pulled up behind her sedan. The house loomed over them, massive and cold. All the curtains were drawn. Is he home? Daniel asked. I don't know. His car's not here, but he has 3, so that doesn't tell us much. Do you want me to come in with you? Get some of your things? Clara shook her head. Not yet. I need to figure out the legal side first. Make sure I do this right. She reached for the door handle, then paused. Daniel? Thank you. For all of this. I know I keep saying it, but I need you to know I mean it. I know you do. She stepped out of the truck, then leaned back in through the open door. I'll follow you back? Yeah, and Clara? If he shows up, if there's any trouble, call me immediately. I will. Daniel watched her walk to her car, watched her settle into the driver's seat and start the engine. She looked small in there, fragile in a way that made his protective instincts flare hot and fierce. They drove back in convoy, Clara's silver sedan in his rearview mirror the whole way. When they pulled into his driveway, Beth was outside watering her flowers. She gave Daniel a look that clearly said they were going to have a long conversation soon. Inside, Mia had migrated from the TV to the floor, where she was building an elaborate structure with blocks. Clara's back, she announced unnecessarily. Want to help me build a castle? I'd love to, Clara said, and she sounded like she meant it. Daniel left them to it, stepping into the kitchen to call Beth's daughter. Sarah picked up on the third ring. Uncle Daniel, it's been forever. How's Mia? She's great. Listen, I need a favor. Professional advice for a friend going through a separation, possibly divorce. Complicated situation. Of course. Have her call my office Monday morning. We'll set up a consultation. Thanks, Sarah. I owe you. You don't owe me anything. You've been like family since forever. Just take care of yourself, okay? He hung up feeling like he'd accomplished something tangible. One step forward. One piece of the puzzle in place. In the living room, Mia's block castle had grown into something impressively complex, with Clara adding towers, while Mia directed the architecture with the seriousness of a general planning a campaign. It needs a moat, Mia declared. Every good castle has a moat. You're absolutely right, Clara agreed. Should we use the blue blocks for water? Yes, and we can put the dragon at the gate to guard it. Daniel leaned against the doorway, watching them work together, and felt something shift in his chest. This moment, his daughter and the woman he'd never stopped caring about building imaginary castles on his living room floor, it felt significant in a way he couldn't quite name. Daddy, you have to help too, Mia said, noticing him. We need more towers. So he joined them on the floor, adding blocks where directed, listening to Mia explain the castle's defense systems in elaborate detail, while Clara asked questions that only encouraged more storytelling. The afternoon slipped away like that. Easy, comfortable, like Clara had always been part of their small family. They ordered pizza for dinner because Daniel couldn't imagine cooking, and Mia voted enthusiastically for pepperoni. They ate at the coffee table instead of the kitchen, Mia insisting on a castle feast to match their construction. After dinner, Mia begged Clara to read her bedtime story. Are you sure? Clara asked, looking to Daniel for permission. Only if you want to, he said. Fair warning, she'll make you read at least 3 books and use different voices for all the characters. I can handle that. So Daniel found himself standing in the doorway of Mia's room, watching Clara settle into the chair beside the bed while Mia piled books into her lap. She read with enthusiasm and expression, giving the dragon a deep growl and the princess a melodious lilt, making Mia giggle and request repeat performances of the best parts. By the time they finished the 3rd book, Mia's eyes were drooping. Night, Clara, Mia mumbled, already half asleep. You should stay forever. Good night, sweetheart, Clara whispered. Daniel stepped in to tuck Mia in properly, kissing her forehead and turning on her star nightlight. When he came back out, Clara was standing in the hallway, her hand pressed to her mouth, her eyes wet. Hey, he said softly. You okay? She's perfect. You're doing such an incredible job with her, Daniel. I'm mostly just making it up as I go. Aren't we all? Clara wiped at her eyes. I should probably let you have your evening. I've monopolized your whole day. You haven't monopolized anything, and we should talk, really talk, about what comes next. They went downstairs, settling onto the couch with fresh coffee. The house quiet around them except for the old familiar sounds, the fridge humming, the heater kicking on, the settling of walls that had heard countless conversations. Sarah, Beth's daughter, can see you Monday morning, Daniel said. She's good. She'll help you figure out your options. Okay, that's good. Clara curled her legs beneath her. I've been thinking about what I want, really want, and I think I want to disappear for a while. Not literally, but from that life. I don't want to go back to that house. I don't want to fight over furniture or artwork or any of the things Marcus thinks define success. What do you want? I want to start over. Get a job, even if it's something small. Find a cheap apartment. Build a life that's actually mine. She looked at him. Is that crazy? Giving up everything for essentially nothing? It's not nothing if it's yours. If it's real. How long did it take you? After Rachel died. How long before you felt like yourself again? Daniel considered the question. I'm not sure I ever felt like my old self again. I think I became someone new. Someone who could survive what happened. Someone who could be a father, even when I had no idea what I was doing. He paused. But if you're asking when I stopped just going through the motions and started actually living again, About 2 years. Maybe 3. That long? Grief is patient. It doesn't rush. And what you're going through, leaving a marriage like that, it's its own kind of grief. You're mourning the life you thought you'd have, the person you thought Marcus was, the years you invested in something that turned out to be hollow. Clara's tears came then, silent and steady. Daniel moved closer, and she leaned into him without hesitation, her head on his shoulder, her body shaking with sobs she'd probably been holding back for years. He held her while she cried, not offering platitudes or solutions, just presence, just the steady anchor of someone who wasn't going anywhere. When the tears finally subsided, Clara stayed where she was, her breathing evening out. "I meant what I said last night," she said quietly. "I never forgot you either. All these years, I've wondered what would have happened if we'd just been honest with each other. If we'd taken that chance." Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. "Clara, I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly. "I know my life is a disaster right now. I know I have no business even thinking about this. But I need you to know, it mattered. What we had, even though we never said it out loud, it mattered." "It mattered to me too," Daniel said, the words rough in his throat. "It still does." She lifted her head to look at him, and the space between them felt charged with 10 years of unspoken words and careful distance, and all the ways they'd both been too afraid to reach for what they wanted. "I should go to bed," Clara whispered, but she didn't move. "You should," Daniel agreed, not moving either. They sat like that for a long moment, balanced on the knife's edge between past and present, between what was safe and what was terrifying. Finally, Clara stood. "Good night, Daniel." "Good night." He watched her climb the stairs, disappearing into the guest room, the door closing softly behind her. Daniel sat alone in the living room for a long time after that, thinking about courage and timing, about chances that arrive when you least expect them, about the difference between being careful and being afraid. Upstairs, 2 people lay awake in separate rooms, both thinking about the same thing, about how sometimes the hardest part isn't knowing what you want. It's knowing what you want and not knowing if you're brave enough to reach for it. The sound that woke Daniel on Sunday morning wasn't Mia's usual thundering footsteps, but voices drifting up from the kitchen. Low and conspiratorial, punctuated by occasional giggles. He checked his phone, 7:15 a.m. Earlier than Mia usually woke on weekends, but apparently she'd found a co-conspirator. When he made his way downstairs, he found his daughter and Clara at the stove, both still in pajamas, working together on what appeared to be an ambitious breakfast operation. Eggs were being scrambled, toast was browning, and Mia was very seriously arranging strawberries on a plate in a pattern that made sense only to her. "We're making surprise breakfast," Mia announced when she saw him. "But now it's not a surprise because you woke up too early." "Sorry about that," Daniel said, fighting a smile. "Should I go back upstairs and pretend I don't know?" "Yes." Mia pointed toward the stairs with a strawberry. "Go! We'll call you when it's ready." Clara met his eyes over Mia's head, her expression soft with amusement and something else he couldn't quite name. She looked different this morning, lighter somehow, like sleep had washed away some of the weight she'd been carrying. "You heard the boss," Clara said. "Back upstairs." So Daniel retreated to his room and sat on the edge of his bed, listening to the sounds of his daughter and the woman he'd never gotten over making breakfast together, and tried to process how his life had shifted so completely in less than 48 hours. When they finally called him down 15 minutes later, the table was set with an impressive spread: scrambled eggs, toast, the strawberries arranged in a smiley face, and orange juice in the fancy glasses they usually saved for holidays. "This is amazing," Daniel said, and meant it. "Clara taught me how to make the eggs fluffy," Mia said proudly. "You have to stir them gently, not like when you do it and they get all broken up." "Noted. I'll work on my gentle stirring technique." They ate together, Mia regaling them with a detailed explanation of the dream she'd had about flying dinosaurs who ran a bakery, and Daniel found himself thinking that this simple moment of breakfast and laughter felt more real than anything had in years. After they finished eating and cleaned up, Clara checked her phone for the first time since the night she'd arrived. Her expression immediately shuddered. "What is it?" Daniel asked. 17 missed calls, all from Marcus. She scrolled through, her jaw tight. "And about 30 text messages." "What do they say?" Clara's laugh was bitter. The first few are angry, demanding to know where I am, telling me I'm being childish. Then they get apologetic. Then they cycle back to angry. Classic pattern. She set the phone down like it burned her. He's probably realized that me being gone makes him look bad. Can't have the neighbors asking questions. You don't have to respond. I know, but I should probably let him know I'm not dead in a ditch somewhere, even if part of me wants him to worry a little longer. She picked up the phone again, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. What do I even say? The truth. That you're safe, and you'll contact him through a lawyer. That simple? That's simple. Clara typed out a brief message, her hands shaking slightly, then hit send before she could second-guess herself. Done. Now he knows I'm alive, and that's all he gets to know. The phone immediately started ringing, Marcus's name flashing on the screen. Don't answer it, Daniel said. Clara silenced the call, then blocked the number entirely. There. That felt good. Daddy, can we go to the library? Mia appeared in the doorway, already wearing her shoes. I finished my books, and I need new ones, and Clara should come because libraries are the best, and she probably needs books too. Clara might have other things to do today, kiddo. Actually, Clara said, the library sounds perfect. I haven't been to one in years. Marcus thought reading anything except the Wall Street Journal was a waste of time. Mia's eyes went wide with horror. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. We have to fix that immediately. So they went to the library, the three of them piling into Daniel's truck and driving to the old brick building downtown that smelled like aged paper and possibility. Mia led them straight to the children's section, pulling books off shelves with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where all her favorite series lived. Clara wandered through the adult fiction section, running her fingers along the spines, occasionally pulling something out to read the back cover. Daniel watched her from across the room, saw the way her shoulders gradually relaxed, the way something tight in her expression slowly unwound. Find anything good? He asked, coming up beside her. She held up 3 books, a mystery, a literary novel, and something that looked like historical fiction. I forgot how much I used to love reading, before everything became about appearances and social climbing and being the right kind of person for Marcus's business associates. What was the right kind of person? Quiet, agreeable, decorative, someone who could make small talk at fundraisers but never had opinions that might contradict his. She slid the books under her arm. I used to read a book a week in college. Do you remember? I always had something with me. Daniel did remember. Could picture her exactly as she'd been at 22, curled up in the student center with a paperback, so absorbed she barely noticed when people walked by. I remember you finished the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy in one weekend because you said once you started, you couldn't stop. Clara's smile was genuine, touched with nostalgia. I called in sick to my work-study job. Worth it. They checked out a stack of books, Mia insisting on carrying Clara's selections along with her own, and grabbed sandwiches from the deli next door. The day had warmed up despite being late October, so they ate in the small park across from the library, Mia alternating between taking bites of her sandwich and reading the first chapter of her new book. I should look for apartments tomorrow, Clara said quietly, watching Mia. After I meet with Sarah. Figure out what I can afford. You don't have to rush. I've been in your guest room for 2 days, Daniel. That's already longer than I should have stayed. Says who? There's no timeline here, Clara. Take the time you need to do this right. She turned to look at him, the autumn sunlight catching in her hair. Why are you so okay with all of this? With me disrupting your life? You're not disrupting anything. He paused, trying to find the right words. You're reminding me that life doesn't have to be just routine and responsibility. That sometimes things happen that shake everything up, and maybe that's not always a bad thing. Before Clara could respond, Mia looked up from her book. Are you guys talking about grown-up stuff? Sort of, Daniel said. Boring. Mia returned to her reading, dismissing them entirely. They stayed in the park until the shadows grew long and Mia finally ran out of energy, her usual endless enthusiasm depleted by a full weekend of activity. On the drive home, she fell asleep in the back seat, her new library book clutched to her chest. She's out cold, Clara observed, glancing back at her. Yeah, she goes hard until she crashes. Daniel pulled into the driveway. I'll carry her in. He lifted Mia carefully from the truck, cradling her the way he'd done since she was born. She stirred slightly, mumbling something about dragons, then settled back into sleep against his shoulder. Clara held the door open as he carried Mia upstairs and tucked her into bed, not even bothering to change her out of her clothes. When he came back down, Clara was in the kitchen making tea. I called Sarah, she said. Confirmed the appointment for tomorrow morning at 10. She said to bring any financial documents I have access to. I can drive you if you want. I can manage. You've already done so much. Clara. Daniel leaned against the counter. Stop trying to do everything alone. That's what got you into this situation in the first place. Her hand stilled on the kettle. That's not fair, isn't it? You've been handling everything by yourself for years, swallowing your needs, your wants, your voice, and now you're free of that and you're still trying to shoulder it all alone instead of accepting help. I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden. You're a person who needs help. There's a difference. He moved closer. Let me help you, please. Clara's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be the kind of person who asks for things. Then start small. Let me drive you tomorrow. That's all. Just let me drive you. She nodded, a tear spilling over. Okay. Yes, thank you. They drank their tea standing in the kitchen, the comfortable silence of two people who'd known each other long enough that words weren't always necessary. Outside, the sun finished setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Can I ask you something? Clara said eventually. Anything. That night, when you said you never told me how you felt because you thought I deserved better, did you really believe that? Or were you just scared? Daniel had spent 10 years avoiding this exact conversation, but standing here now with Clara's honest eyes on his, he couldn't hide behind excuses anymore. Both, he admitted. I did think you deserved someone who had more to offer than I did. But I was also terrified. Terrified that if I told you and you didn't feel the same way, I'd lose you completely. And terrified that if you did feel the same way, I'd somehow mess it up and lose you anyway. So you chose to lose me by staying silent. Yeah, brilliant strategy, right? Clara set down her mug. I spent my wedding day thinking about you. Did you know that? I stood there in that expensive dress, listening to Marcus make all these promises, and all I could think was that you would have meant them. That with you, it would have been real. Daniel's breath caught. Why did you go through with it? Because I'd already said yes. Because my parents were so proud. Because everyone kept telling me how lucky I was, and I thought maybe they were right. Maybe love wasn't supposed to feel like fireworks. Maybe it was supposed to be practical and stable and sensible. She laughed, the sound hollow. Turns out I was wrong about all of it. You weren't wrong to want stability. You just chose the wrong person to build it with. And now I get to start over at 32 with nothing to my name except a law degree I haven't used in 8 years and a wardrobe full of clothes I bought to impress people I don't even like. You also have your intelligence, your strength, and the courage it took to walk away from a situation that was destroying you. That's not nothing, Clara. She studied him for a long moment. How did you get so wise? Single parenting. It either makes you wise or breaks you, and I was too stubborn to break. I'm really glad you answered your phone that night. Me too. They stood there in the kitchen, the space between them charged with possibility and fear in equal measure. Daniel wanted to close that distance, wanted to pull her into his arms and tell her everything he'd been too afraid to say 10 years ago. But he didn't, because she was raw and vulnerable and rebuilding her life from scratch. And the last thing she needed was another complication, so instead he stepped back. You should get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. Something flickered across Clara's face. Disappointment maybe, or relief, but she nodded. You're right. Good night, Daniel. Good night. He watched her climb the stairs, then sat alone in the kitchen until the house settled into silence. His phone buzzed with a text from Beth. How's your house guest? Doing okay. She has a lawyer meeting tomorrow. Good. And how are you doing? Daniel stared at the question, not sure how to answer. How was he doing? His carefully ordered life had been turned upside down. The woman he'd never gotten over was sleeping in his guest room. His daughter was getting attached to someone who might not stay. Every rational instinct he possessed was screaming that this was dangerous, that he was setting himself up for heartbreak. And yet, "I'm good," he typed back. "Surprisingly good. Be careful, Daniel. I know that look you get when you talk about her." "What look?" "The same look you had 10 years ago, like she hung the moon." Daniel set his phone down without responding because Beth was right and they both knew it. He did look at Clara that way. Had always looked at Clara that way. The question was whether this time he'd be brave enough to do something about it. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that matched the heaviness of what Clara was about to face. Daniel got Mia off to school, then came home to find Clara dressed in slacks and a blouse she'd borrowed from Beth, looking every inch the competent professional despite the anxiety radiating from her. "Ready?" he asked. "No, but let's go anyway." They drove to Sarah's office in relative silence, Clara's hands twisted together in her lap, her breathing measured like she was consciously working to stay calm. "It's going to be okay," Daniel said as they pulled into the parking lot. "You don't know that." "No, but I believe it anyway." Sarah's office was in a converted house downtown, warm and welcoming rather than intimidating. She met them in the lobby, pulling Daniel into a hug before turning to Clara with a professional but kind smile. "You must be Clara. I'm Sarah. Come on back." Daniel started to follow, but Sarah shook her head. "This first consultation should be just Clara and me. Attorney-client privilege and all that. There's coffee in the waiting room." So Daniel settled into an uncomfortable chair with mediocre coffee and waited. And waited. An hour passed. Then 90 minutes. Finally, the door opened and Clara emerged, her eyes red but her spine straight. "How did it go?" Daniel asked as they walked to the truck. "She's good. Really good. She laid out all my options, explained what I'm entitled to, helped me understand the process." Clara climbed into the passenger seat. "She also said that Marcus is going to make this as difficult as possible, that he'll use every resource he has to maintain control." "What did you say?" "I said I don't care, that I want out and I want to do it right, and if that takes time, then it takes time." She buckled her seatbelt. "Sarah's going to draft a separation agreement and send it to Marcus's attorney. She thinks we can keep it out of court if he's reasonable, but she's not counting on reasonable." "What do you need from me?" Clara turned to look at him. "Honestly, I need you to keep reminding me why I'm doing this, because there are going to be days when it feels easier to just go back, to accept the cage if it means I don't have to fight. You're doing this because you deserve a life that's actually yours, because you deserve to be more than someone's accessory, because Mia looked at you yesterday like you were the most interesting person in the world, and that's what real connection looks like." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "When did you become exactly what I needed?" "I've always been what you needed, you just weren't ready to see it yet." The words hung between them, honest and terrifying. Clara reached across the console and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I'm seeing it now," she whispered. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. He wanted to pull her close, wanted to kiss her the way he'd imagined doing 1,000 times over the past 10 years, but not like this. Not when she was emotionally raw and vulnerable and in the middle of the biggest crisis of her life. So instead, he squeezed her hand and started the truck. "Let's get you home." The word slipped out accidentally, but Clara didn't correct him, just held his hand the whole drive back, her thumb tracing small circles against his palm. When they arrived at the house, Clara's phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. "Hello?" Daniel watched her face go pale, watched her grip on the phone tighten. "I understand." "Yes. Thank you for letting me know." She hung up, her hands shaking. "That was the bank. Marcus froze all our accounts. I can't access anything, not even the emergency credit card." Rage flooded through Daniel, hot and fierce. "He can't do that." "Apparently he can. And he did." Clara's laugh bordered on hysterical. "Sarah warned me this might happen, said it's a common control tactic." "Did she say what to do about it?" "File an emergency motion with the court. But that takes time. In the meantime," her voice broke, "I literally have nothing. The $50 in my purse is all I have in the world." "That's not true." Daniel cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You have me. You have Mia. You have Beth next door and Sarah on your side. You have people who care about you, which is more than Marcus has ever had. But I can't even pay for a hotel room, can't pay Sarah's retainer, can't do anything except depend on other people's charity. It's not charity, it's friendship. It's... He stopped himself before he said what he really meant. It's people taking care of each other. That's what human beings do. Clara sagged against him, and he held her while she cried, fury burning through him at Marcus Bennett and every man like him who thought money and control were the same as power. "We'll fix this," he said into her hair. "I promise you, we'll fix this." Inside, they found Mia already home from school, Beth having picked her up and brought her over. "Mom emergency," Beth explained, seeing Daniel's questioning look. "Figured you two might need some time." Mia took one look at Clara's tear-stained face and immediately wrapped her arms around Clara's waist. "It's okay. Sometimes everything feels terrible, but then it gets better. That's what Daddy always tells me." Clara laughed through her tears, hugging Mia back. "Your daddy is a very smart man." "I know. He's the smartest." Mia pulled back. "Want to help me with my homework? It's about fractions and they're really hard, but maybe you're good at them." "I am pretty good at fractions," Clara admitted. "See? Everything's better already." They settled at the kitchen table with Mia's homework while Daniel walked Beth to the door. "She okay?" Beth asked quietly. "Getting there." Her husband froze their bank accounts. Beth's expression hardened. "What a piece of work." "Yeah. She's staying here then? For the foreseeable future?" "Looks like it." "And you're okay with that?" Daniel met Beth's knowing eyes. "More than okay." "Daniel Carter, are you finally going to tell that girl how you feel? Because I've watched you pine for a decade and it's getting old." "It's complicated." "Love usually is, but that doesn't make it any less worth fighting for." Beth patted his cheek. "Don't let her slip away again. Not when fate or whatever gave you a second chance." After Beth left, Daniel returned to find Clara genuinely helping Mia with fractions, the two of them working through problems with the patients that made his chest ache. "See," Clara was saying, "if you cut the pizza into 8 pieces instead of 4, the pieces get smaller, so one slice is a smaller fraction of the whole pizza." "Oh, that makes sense. Why doesn't Mrs. Peterson explain it like that?" "Maybe she doesn't like pizza as much as we do. That's sad for her." They worked through the rest of the homework together. Then Clara helped Mia practice her spelling words, quizzing her over and over until she could spell because without mixing up the letters. Dinner was simple, spaghetti with marinara sauce, but they ate together like a family, Mia chattering about her day while Clara asked questions, and Daniel watched them both, thinking about how quickly life could change. After Mia went to bed, Daniel and Clara ended up on the couch again, the same spots they'd occupied the night before. "I talked to Sarah again this afternoon," Clara said. "She's filing the emergency motion tomorrow. Said she's seen judges move quickly on these kinds of freezes when there's evidence of financial abuse." "How long until you hear something?" "Could be a week, could be a month. Family court moves slowly." She pulled her knees to her chest. "I keep thinking about how 8 years ago I signed papers giving Marcus access to everything, every account, every decision. I handed him the keys to control my entire life." "You trusted him. That's not a character flaw, Clara." "But it was naive. I should have known better, should have kept something separate, some safety net." "Hindsight is always clearer. You made the best decisions you could with the information you had." Daniel shifted to face her. "And you're making different decisions now. That's what matters." "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if I can't do this? What if I'm not strong enough?" "You drove across town in the middle of the night and asked for help. You met with a lawyer and decided to fight instead of surrender. You're letting yourself rebuild even though it terrifies you." He reached for her hand. "You're the strongest person I know, Clara. You just haven't realized it yet." She looked at their joined hands, her expression unreadable. "Daniel, I need to tell you something." His heart rate kicked up. "Okay." "These past few days with you and Mia, it's been the happiest I've been in years. And I know that's probably just because I'm escaping something terrible, that it's context and relief talking. But it feels real. It feels like maybe all those years ago, we were supposed to end up here. Like maybe everything had to fall apart so we could find our way back to each other." Daniel's breath caught. "Clara." "I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly. I know I'm a mess right now. I know I have no business even thinking about this. But I need you to know that when I look at you, I don't see someone who's just helping me. I see the person I should have chosen 10 years ago. The person I was too afraid to choose. Every word Daniel had been holding back for a decade pressed against his throat, demanding to be spoken. But he forced himself to think clearly, to consider what Clara actually needed rather than what he wanted. I need you to hear me, he said carefully. Everything you're feeling right now is real, but it's also tangled up in trauma and change and upheaval. And I don't want to be something you choose because I'm safe and available. He stopped, gathering courage. If we do this, if we go down this road, I need you to choose me because you actually want me, not because I'm the life raft you grabbed when you were drowning. Clara's eyes widened. You think that's what this is? I think you've been through hell, and I'm the first person who's shown you kindness in years. I think you're grateful and vulnerable and probably not thinking clearly. And I think if we do this now, we'll both end up hurt. So what are you saying? I'm saying that I've waited 10 years. I can wait a little longer. Until you're on solid ground. Until you've had time to figure out who you are outside of Marcus's shadow. Until choosing me is a choice you're making from a place of strength rather than survival. Tears streamed down Clara's face. What if by then you've changed your mind? Daniel cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing away her tears. I'm not going to change my mind. I didn't change my mind in 10 years, Clara. I'm not going to change it in a few months. You're really willing to wait? For you? Always. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. That's the most romantic and frustrating thing anyone's ever said to me. I contain multitudes. That surprised a laugh out of her. When she opened her eyes again, there was something different there, something that looked like hope. Okay, she said. We wait. We do this right. But Daniel? Yeah? Don't wait too long. The promise hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. Daniel kept his hands on Clara's face for one more moment, memorizing the way she looked at him with hope and trust, and something deeper he didn't dare name yet. Then he pulled back, putting necessary distance between them. I should let you get some rest, he said, his voice rougher than he intended. Clara nodded, wiping at her eyes. Yeah, long day tomorrow. Sarah wants me to start documenting everything I can remember about the marriage. Financial decisions, conversations about work. Anytime Marcus made me feel controlled or diminished. That's going to be hard. Everything about this is hard. But it's the right kind of hard. The kind that leads somewhere better. She stood, pausing at the bottom of the stairs. Thank you, Daniel, for being patient with me, for seeing what I need even when I don't see it myself. Good night, Clara. Good night. He watched her disappear upstairs, then sat in the quiet living room, his mind racing. He'd just told the woman he'd loved for a decade that he would wait for her, had put boundaries in place when every instinct screamed at him to pull her close and never let go. But he'd meant what he said. If they were going to do this, it had to be right. Clara deserved the chance to rebuild herself without the pressure of jumping straight into another relationship. And he deserved to be chosen deliberately, not desperately. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Clara did great today. You're a good friend for supporting her through this. Daniel stared at the word friend for a long time before responding. Just trying to help. Well, keep it up. She's going to need all the support she can get. Marcus's attorney already responded. He's not going to make this easy. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. What did he say? That Clara abandoned the marital home and has no right to any financial support. That she's financially irresponsible and he was protecting their assets. Standard gaslighting nonsense, but it means we're in for a fight. How long? Could be months before we get a settlement, maybe longer if he drags it out. Whatever she needs. We'll figure it out. There was a pause, then, you care about her, more than as a friend. Daniel considered lying, but this was Sarah. She'd known him since she was a kid running around Beth's backyard. Yeah, I do. Does she know? She knows. And we're waiting until she's on solid ground. That's very mature of you, also probably killing you inside. Little bit, but it's the right thing to do. Well, for what it's worth, I think you're good for each other. I remember how you used to look at her back in college, like she was the only person in the room. I wasn't that obvious. Daniel, You were incredibly obvious. Everyone knew except apparently Clara. He smiled despite himself. Get some sleep, Sarah. Thanks for everything you're doing for her. That's what family does. Even the adopted kind. The next few weeks fell into an unexpected rhythm. Clara started working on her case with Sarah, spending hours documenting her marriage, gathering whatever financial records she could access, building the narrative of what her life had been like with Marcus. It was exhausting work, emotionally draining, and there were nights when she came back to the house looking hollowed out. But there were also moments of progress. The court granted an emergency motion giving Clara access to one of their joint accounts, enough to cover basic expenses while the divorce proceedings continued. It wasn't much, but it was something. A foothold. She started looking for work, updating the resume she hadn't touched in 8 years, applying for positions that made use of her law degree even though she'd never practiced. Paralegal jobs, legal assistant positions, anything that would give her independence and income. And slowly, carefully, she started building a life. She helped Mia with homework every afternoon, the two of them developing their own rapport that had nothing to do with Daniel. She learned to cook the things Mia loved: macaroni and cheese from scratch, homemade chicken nuggets, chocolate chip cookies that Mia declared better than any store-bought kind. She joined Daniel and Mia for their Saturday park trips, their Sunday library visits, their weeknight routine of dinner and dishes and bedtime stories. She fit into their life like a piece that had always been missing, filling spaces Daniel hadn't realized were empty. And through it all, they maintained the careful distance they'd agreed on. No crossing lines, no blurring boundaries, just friendship and support, and the growing certainty that when the time was right, they would be inevitable. 3 weeks after Clara had arrived, she came home from a job interview with an actual smile on her face. I got it, she said, finding Daniel in the kitchen where he was attempting to make dinner while Mia did math homework at the table. The paralegal position at Henderson and Associates. They want me to start Monday. Daniel pulled her into a hug before he could stop himself, then immediately stepped back, remembering their agreement. But Clara was laughing, her eyes bright with something he hadn't seen in weeks, genuine joy. That's amazing. Tell me everything. She settled at the table next to Mia, who abandoned her homework to listen. It's a small firm, just 3 attorneys. They do family law mostly, some estate planning. The office manager said my law degree was impressive even if I haven't practiced. They liked that I understood the legal side but wouldn't be competing for client work. What's the pay like? Enough to get my own place eventually. Not enough for anything fancy, but enough. She paused. I'll need to save up for first and last month's rent plus a deposit. Sarah said it could take a couple months. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need, Daniel said. We've got the room. Daddy loves having you here, Mia added helpfully. He smiles more now, and the house is less quiet. Daniel felt heat creep up his neck. Mia, what? It's true. You said to always tell the truth. Clara was trying not to smile. Did he now? Uh-huh. He also said you're really brave for starting over, and that he admires you. Okay, that's enough sharing Daddy's private conversations, Daniel said, shooting his daughter a look that she completely ignored. And he told Beth that you're special and that he's… Mia, homework, now. His daughter grinned, clearly pleased with herself, and returned to her math problems. Clara caught Daniel's eye across the table, her expression soft with affection and amusement. You think I'm brave? She asked quietly. Among other things. What other things? Finish your homework, Mia, Daniel said pointedly. Then we'll talk about your tendency to eavesdrop on adult conversations. I'm not eavesdropping if you're talking in the same room, Mia pointed out, but she bent over her math with exaggerated focus. That night, after Mia was asleep, Clara found Daniel in the garage where he was attempting to fix a squeaky wheel on Mia's bike. Need help? She asked. Unless you're secretly a bike mechanic, probably not. He straightened, wiping grease from his hands. What's up? I wanted to thank you for everything, for letting me stay, for supporting me through all of this, for being patient while I figure out my life. You don't need to thank me. I do, though. Because you didn't have to do any of this. You could have told me to call a hotel that first night. Could have kept your distance, protected yourself and Mia from getting involved in my mess. That was never an option. Why not? Daniel set down his wrench, giving her his full attention. Because some people matter too much. Because some chances only come around once. Because walking away from you the first time nearly broke me, and I wasn't about to make that mistake twice. Clara moved closer, her eyes searching his face. I'm getting stronger. Every day I feel more like myself. Like the person I was before Marcus, but better, more certain. I know. I can see it. How much longer do you think we need to wait? The question caught him off guard. Clara, I'm not trying to rush anything. I need to know that we're working towards something, that this isn't just indefinite friendship. It's not. But you're still in the middle of your divorce. You're starting a new job, building a new life. I don't want to add pressure. You're not pressure, Daniel. You're the opposite. You're the only thing that feels certain in all of this chaos. She took a breath. I've been thinking about what you said, about choosing you from a place of strength instead of survival, and I think I'm getting there. I think I'm almost there. Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. Almost isn't the same as there. I know, but I wanted you to know that this isn't just gratitude or proximity or convenience, that when the time comes, when I'm ready, it's going to be real. It's going to be everything. Before he could respond, before he could make a decision he might regret, she stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, soft and brief and loaded with promise. Good night, Daniel. She was gone before he could find his voice, leaving him standing in the garage with grease on his hands and hope expanding in his chest like light. The following Monday, Clara started her new job. She left early, nervous and determined, wearing one of the professional outfits Beth had helped her find at a consignment shop. When she came home that evening, she was exhausted but energized. How was it? Daniel asked, looking up from where he was helping Mia build a house out of popsicle sticks. Overwhelming, amazing, terrifying, all of it. Clara dropped her bag by the door. I spent the entire day learning their case management system and trying to remember legal terminology I haven't used in years. But they're patient. The attorneys are good people. I think this is going to work. Of course it will work. You're brilliant. Clara, look! Mia held up the popsicle stick structure, which was listing dangerously to one side. I'm building a house for fairies. That's beautiful. Are you going to paint it? Yes. Will you help me pick colors? Absolutely. Daniel watched them discuss fairy house color schemes, watched Clara settle into their life with increasing ease, and felt the future taking shape around them. 2 days later, everything shifted again. Clara came home from work looking shaken, her face pale. Daniel took one look at her and sent Mia upstairs to play. What happened? Marcus showed up at my office. Clara's hands trembled as she set down her purse. I was coming back from lunch and he was just there, waiting in the parking lot. Anger flooded through Daniel, sharp and protective. Did he touch you? No, but he said things about how I was making a mistake, how I'd never survive without him, how I was embarrassing him and his family, and I needed to stop this nonsense and come home. What did you say? I told him to leave, that all communication needed to go through our attorneys. And he laughed, Daniel. He actually laughed and said that hiring some small-time family lawyer wasn't going to protect me from him. Did anyone else see this? One of the paralegals, she came out and asked if everything was okay. Marcus left after that, but Clara wrapped her arms around herself. He's not going to let this go quietly. Sarah warned me he'd escalate, but I didn't think he'd show up at my workplace. Daniel pulled out his phone. I'm calling Sarah. This is harassment. He didn't technically do anything illegal. He was on public property, and he didn't threaten me. He showed up at your job to intimidate you. That counts for something. He dialed Sarah's number, put it on speaker. She answered on the second ring. Daniel? What's wrong? Marcus ambushed Clara in her office parking lot today. A pause, then Sarah's voice went hard. Tell me everything. Clara recounted the encounter, her voice steadier now that she was talking it through. Sarah listened without interrupting, then spoke with calm authority. Okay, first, this isn't illegal, but it's definitely inappropriate and we can use it. Second, I'm filing for a restraining order tomorrow morning. Third, Clara, I need you to document everything. Time, place, exact words if you remember them. Get a statement from that paralegal who witnessed it. He's going to be so angry, Clara said quietly. Let him be angry. He doesn't get to control you anymore. That's the whole point of this process. Sarah's tone softened. You're doing great, Clara. Don't let him shake you. After they hung up, Clara sank onto the couch, her composure finally cracking. I thought leaving would be the hard part, but this ongoing battle, him trying to maintain control even when I'm gone, I don't know how much more I can take. Daniel sat beside her, close but not touching. You can take more than you think. You've already survived the worst of it. Everything from here is just noise. It doesn't feel like noise. It feels like he's everywhere. Then we make sure you're not alone. I'll drive you to work, pick you up. We'll vary the schedule so he can't predict when you'll be there. Daniel, you have your own job, your own life. My job is flexible, and my life is better when you're safe. He finally reached for her hand. Let me help. Please. She nodded, squeezing his fingers. Okay. Yes. Thank you. That night, after Mia was asleep, Daniel found Clara in the guest room, staring at her phone. He's been texting, she said without looking up, from different numbers. The same message over and over. You're making a mistake. Come home. Block them all, or better yet, give me the phone. She handed it over without argument. Daniel blocked each new number, then went into her settings and enabled additional filters. There. Now only contacts can text you. Everyone else gets silenced. He'll just find another way. Probably. But we'll deal with each attempt as it comes. That's all we can do. He sat on the edge of the bed. How are you really doing? Not the brave face you put on for Mia and Sarah. The truth. Clara was quiet for a long moment. I'm scared. Not of him physically, but of losing myself again. Of letting him convince me that I'm wrong, that I'm being unreasonable, that I should just give up and go back. That's not going to happen. How do you know? Because the Clara I knew 10 years ago was fierce and independent and sure of herself. And I've watched that person come back to life over the past month. You're not the same person who was trapped in that marriage. You've already changed, already grown. There's no going back to who you were because that person doesn't exist anymore. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I want to believe that. Then believe it. Believe in the woman who had the courage to call me that night, who met with a lawyer and started divorce proceedings, who got a job and started rebuilding. That woman is strong enough to handle whatever Marcus throws at her. Clara reached for him, and this time Daniel didn't maintain distance. He pulled her close, let her cry against his shoulder, held her, while she released the fear and stress she'd been carrying. I don't know what I would have done without you, she whispered. You would have figured it out, but I'm glad you didn't have to. They stayed like that for a long time, Clara curled against him, Daniel's arms around her. It wasn't romantic. It was something deeper, the kind of trust that came from being seen completely and choosing to stay anyway. When Clara finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clear. I think I'm ready. Ready for what? To choose you. From strength, like you said. To stop waiting. Daniel's breath caught. Clara, you just had a traumatic encounter with your ex-husband. Your emotions are all over the place. This isn't the time. This is exactly the time. Because Marcus showing up reminded me what I'm fighting for. Not just freedom from him, but freedom to choose what I actually want. And I want this. I want you. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. For the first time in 10 years, I know exactly what I want, and I'm not afraid to reach for it. She cupped his face in her hands. Unless you've changed your mind, unless waiting made you realize this isn't what you want anymore. No, I haven't changed my mind. I couldn't change my mind if I tried. He covered her hands with his own. But I need you to be sure, because once we cross this line, there's no going back. Once I let myself love you completely, I won't be able to protect myself if it falls apart. Then don't protect yourself. Take the risk. Choose me the way I'm choosing you. Daniel looked into her eyes, saw the certainty there, the strength she'd rebuilt piece by piece over the past month, saw the woman he'd loved at 22 and the woman she'd become at 32, and realized they were the same person, just braver now, more honest, more sure. Okay, he said. Okay. And then he kissed her. It was nothing like he'd imagined during all those years of wondering. It was better. It was Clara kissing him back with 10 years of unspoken feelings, with newfound courage and desperate hope. It was both of them finally letting go of caution and fear, and all the reasons they'd spent a decade apart. When they finally broke apart, Both breathing hard, Clara laughed against his mouth. That was worth the wait. Yeah, it really was. She pulled him back down, kissing him again, and Daniel let himself fall. Let himself believe that maybe second chances were real. That maybe all the pain and loneliness and years of missing her had led them exactly here, to this moment, to this choice. They heard Mia's door open down the hall and sprang apart like teenagers caught by their parents. Mia appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. I had a bad dream, she said. Can I sleep with you, Daddy? Of course, baby. Daniel stood, shooting Clara an apologetic look. I should... Go, take care of her. Clara smiled. We have time now. He followed Mia to his room, got her settled in his bed with her favorite stuffed dinosaur. She curled against him, already half asleep again. Daddy, she mumbled, do you love Clara? Daniel's heart skipped. What makes you ask that? Because you look at her the way the prince looks at the princess in my fairy tale books, like she's magic. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds. Yeah, baby, I do love her. Good, because she loves you too, I can tell. Mia yawned. Are you going to get married? Slow down. We're taking things one step at a time. Okay, but when you do get married, can I be the flower girl? Daniel laughed quietly. Yes, if that ever happens, you can definitely be the flower girl. Perfect. She snuggled closer. I'm glad she called you that night. I'm glad she's here. Me too, kiddo. Me too. He lay awake long after Mia fell asleep, thinking about kisses in guest rooms, and 7-year-olds who saw through everything, and women who had the courage to choose love even when their world was falling apart. Downstairs, his phone buzzed with a text from Clara. No regrets, just so you know. He smiled in the darkness and typed back, no regrets. Sleep well. You too. And Daniel, yeah? Thank you for waiting. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for being you, always. He set the phone aside and closed his eyes. Mia's warm weight against his side, Clara just down the hall. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Daniel Carter felt completely at peace. The pieces of their lives were still scattered, still being gathered and reassembled. Clara's divorce was far from finished. Marcus would continue to make trouble. There were hard days ahead, legal battles to fight, adjustments to make. But they would face it together now, not as friends keeping careful distance, but as something more, something real and earned and chosen deliberately. In the guest room, Clara lay in bed with her own phone, reading and rereading Daniel's messages, touching her fingers to her lips where he'd kissed her. She'd spent so many years believing she'd made her choice, that the door to this particular future had closed when she said yes to Marcus's proposal, that some chances only came around once and she'd missed hers. But here she was, given a second chance by nothing more than desperation and a phone call in the middle of the night. Given a second chance by Daniel's patience and kindness and unwavering belief in her strength. She wasn't naive enough to think it would be easy. Recovery never was. Building a life from scratch took time and courage and faith that the foundation would hold. But as she drifted off to sleep in Daniel's guest room, in the house that had become more home than anywhere else she'd lived, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt hope. Real, tangible, undeniable hope. And that, she thought, was worth every hard step that had led her here. Morning arrived with Mia bouncing on Daniel's bed, completely oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred the night before. Wake up, wake up! It's Saturday and you promised we could make pancakes and go to the park and maybe get ice cream if I'm good. Daniel groaned, squinting at the clock. 7:03 a.m. Mia, it's barely 7. I know. We're wasting valuable weekend time. She bounced again for emphasis. Come on, Daddy. Claire's already awake. I heard her shower running. That got his attention. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. Okay, go get dressed and I'll meet you downstairs. Mia scrambled off the bed and thundered down the hall. Daniel took a moment to collect himself, to process what had happened last night. He'd kissed Clara. After 10 years of wondering and waiting and careful distance, he'd finally kissed her. And she'd kissed him back. By the time he made it downstairs, Clara was already in the kitchen, her hair still damp, wearing jeans and a sweater that Beth had given her. She looked up when he entered, and the smile that spread across her face was shy and knowing and absolutely radiant. Morning, she said. Morning. He moved toward her, then hesitated, aware of Mia somewhere nearby. Did you sleep okay? Better than I have in years. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. No regrets in the daylight either, just so you know. Good, because I was planning to kiss you again, and it would be awkward if you'd changed your mind. Was that your smooth way of asking permission? I'm out of practice. Give me a break. She laughed, closing the distance between them and kissing him quickly before stepping back. There. Now we're even. I'm making pancakes, Mia announced, appearing in the doorway wearing mismatched socks and a shirt with a unicorn on it. Clara, you have to help because Daddy always makes them too thick. My pancakes are perfect, Daniel protested. They're dense, Clara agreed, trying not to smile, like little hockey pucks. Traitor. They spent the morning in easy domesticity, making breakfast together, cleaning up, Mia chattering nonstop about her plans for the day. Daniel and Clara exchanged glances over Mia's head, small smiles that held entire conversations. After breakfast, Daniel's phone rang. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. I need to take this, he said, stepping into the living room. Hey, Sarah. Morning. I've got news. The judge granted the restraining order. Marcus has to stay at least 500 feet away from Clara, her workplace, and your address. Relief flooded through him. That's great. When does it go into effect? As of an hour ago, I had him served at his office this morning. There was satisfaction in Sarah's voice. His attorney called me already, furious, said we're being dramatic and vindictive. What did you say? That his client showed up at my client's workplace to harass her, and we have a witness statement to prove it. That shut him up pretty quickly. She paused. Look, this is going to make Marcus angrier. He's not used to being told no. Clara needs to be prepared for him to push back in other ways. Like what? Financial games, mostly. He's already fighting the account access. He'll probably challenge the restraining order, claim Clara is lying about feeling threatened. He might even try to make her look unstable or manipulative to the court. Daniel felt anger simmer in his chest. How do we prevent that? We document everything, every interaction, every text, every attempt at contact. We build a clear pattern of his behavior. Sarah's tone softened. And you keep doing what you're doing, giving her stability and support. That matters more than you know. After he hung up, Daniel found Clara in the kitchen, wiping down the counters while Mia colored at the table. That was Sarah. The restraining order went through, Clara's hands stilled on the counter. Already? Marcus was served this morning. He has to stay at least 500 feet away from you, from your work, and from this house. She turned to face him, her expression cycling through relief, fear, and something that might have been vindication. He's going to be furious. Let him be furious from 500 feet away. Daniel moved to her side. This is a good thing, Clara. It means you have legal protection now. It also means we've crossed a line we can't uncross. Before, there was still a chance he might be reasonable. Now, she shook her head. Now it's war. Then we fight, together. Mia looked up from her coloring. Are you guys talking about grown-up stuff again? Yeah, baby, sorry. It's okay. Just tell me when you're done so we can go to the park. She returned to her drawing, apparently unconcerned with whatever drama the adults were navigating. They went to the park as promised, Mia running ahead while Daniel and Clara walked side by side. Their hands brushed together, and Clara laced her fingers through his without hesitation. Is this okay? She asked. Out here where people can see? More than okay. Unless you're worried about... I'm not worried about anything. For the first time in years, I'm not worried about what people think, or how things look, or whether I'm doing the right thing for someone else's reputation. She squeezed his hand. I'm done hiding. At the park, Mia found her usual group of friends and ran off to the climbing structure. Daniel and Clara settled on their customary bench, watching the children play. I've been thinking about apartments, Clara said. Now that I have income, I should start looking. Give you and Mia your space back. Daniel turned to look at her. Is that what you want? Or what you think you should do? I don't know. Both, maybe? She leaned against him. I don't want to overstay my welcome, and I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own 2 feet. You've already proven that. You got a job, you're fighting for your freedom, you're rebuilding your entire life. Moving out won't make those things more true. But staying in your guest room indefinitely while we're... She gestured between them. While we're doing this, it feels complicated. Life is complicated. Doesn't mean we have to rush things. He put his arm around her. Stay as long as you need to. When you're ready to get your own place because you want to, not because you think you should, then we'll talk about it. You're being very understanding about your girlfriend living in your guest room. Is that what you are? My girlfriend? Clara smiled. I think so. Unless you want to call me something else. How about the woman I've been in love with for 10 years who finally decided I was worth the risk? Her breath caught. You love me. I love you. I've loved you since we were 22 and you fell asleep in the library with your face in a book. I loved you when you married someone else. I loved you when you called me in the middle of the night. I love you now, and I'll love you tomorrow, and I'll probably love you when we're both old and gray and Mia's off living her own life. Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks. Daniel, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. But I do. I love you too. I think I always have. I was just too afraid to admit it, even to myself. She kissed him, soft and sweet, right there on the park bench where anyone could see. I love you. They stayed at the park until the afternoon sun began to slant long shadows across the playground. Mia finally wore herself out, trudging over to them with grass-stained knees and a massive smile. Can we get ice cream now? I was super good, and I didn't fight with anyone, and I shared the swings. Ice cream it is, Daniel agreed. They walked to the shop 3 blocks away, Mia between them, holding both their hands. To anyone watching, they looked like a family. And maybe, Daniel thought, they were becoming one. The weekend passed in a comfortable haze. They settled into a new normal, one where Daniel and Clara weren't quite so careful about maintaining distance, where small touches and stolen kisses became part of the rhythm of their days, where Mia seemed to instinctively understand that something had shifted even if no one had explicitly explained it to her. Monday morning, Clara headed to work with Daniel driving her as he'd promised. He walked her to the office door, kissed her goodbye in full view of the parking lot, and watched until she disappeared inside. His phone rang before he'd even pulled out of the lot. Beth. So? She said without preamble. You and Clara finally stopped dancing around each other. How did you? Please, I saw you two at the park yesterday. Also, Sarah told me, you have a very distinctive happy face that you only get when you're thinking about her. Daniel smiled despite himself. Yeah, we're together. For real this time. Good. It's about time. That girl's been half in love with you since college. And you've been completely in love with her for just as long. Nice to see you both finally figured it out. Thanks, Beth, for everything. For watching Mia, for helping Clara, for not judging any of this mess. That's what neighbors are for. Well, that and borrowing sugar. Speaking of which, can I borrow some sugar? You're insufferable. I'm delightful, and you know it. Bring sugar when you get home. The call ended, leaving Daniel shaking his head and smiling. He drove to his office. He'd been working from home more than usual, but he had meetings scheduled today he couldn't miss. His job as a financial consultant had always been flexible, which had been a lifesaver when Mia was younger and needed constant supervision. Now that flexibility meant he could adjust his schedule to drive Clara to work, pick up Mia from school, be present in ways that mattered. The day progressed normally until mid-afternoon when his phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He ignored it. 5 minutes later, another unknown number, then another. On the 4th call, he answered. Daniel Carter, he said, his voice deliberately flat. So you're the one. Marcus Bennett's voice was cold, controlled. The one she's been staying with. The one who convinced her to destroy our marriage. Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. You're violating a restraining order just by calling me. The restraining order is a joke, a dramatic overreaction to a simple conversation in a parking lot. That's not how the judge saw it, and this call is being recorded, so every word you're saying right now can be used against you. A pause. Then, she was nothing when I met her, a girl with a law degree and no prospects. I gave her everything, a home, a life, status, and this is how she repays me? By running to some... The word he used made Daniel's blood boil. Some nobody who lives in a 2-bedroom house and drives a 10-year-old truck? I'm going to hang up now, and I'm going to send this recording to Clara's attorney, and you're going to leave us alone. You think this is over? You think she gets to walk away from me without consequences? I will make her life hell. I will make sure she ends up with nothing, and you'll end up alone when she realizes what a mistake she made choosing you over me." Daniel ended the call, his hands shaking with rage. He immediately forwarded the recording to Sarah, then texted Clara. "Marcus called me. Don't panic, I'm handling it." Her response came quickly. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. He's an idiot." "Sarah's dealing with it?" "I'm so sorry. I never meant for him to drag you into this." "Clara, I walked into this with my eyes open. He can't intimidate me. Focus on work. I'll see you tonight." Sarah called 30 seconds later. "I just heard the recording. What an absolute piece of work. Can you use this?" "Oh, I can absolutely use this. He violated the restraining order by contacting you to discuss Clara. He made threats. He used language that shows his mindset. This is gold, Daniel. Awful, infuriating gold." She paused. "How are you doing? That must have been disturbing to hear." "I'm angry, but I'm okay." "What happens now?" "I file a motion to hold him in contempt of court. The judge is not going to be happy that he violated the order less than a week after it was issued. This could actually work in our favor for the divorce settlement." "How so?" "It shows a pattern of controlling, abusive behavior. Makes it harder for him to claim he's the reasonable party. Helps our argument that Clara left because she felt unsafe and controlled." After they hung up, Daniel sat at his desk, trying to process what had just happened. Marcus had sounded so certain, so convinced that he was in the right, that Clara belonged to him, that money and status mattered more than basic human decency. It made Daniel sick, and it made him more determined than ever to make sure Clara never went back to that life. When he picked Clara up from work that evening, she was quiet in the truck, staring out the window. "Sarah told me about the call," she said finally. "About what he said. Don't let it get to you. He's lashing out because he's losing control. He called you a nobody." Her voice was thick with anger. "Like your worth is determined by your bank account or the size of your house. Like the fact that you're kind and patient and an amazing father doesn't matter at all." "I don't care what Marcus Bennett thinks of me." "Well, I do. Because you're the best person I know, and he's—" She stopped, taking a breath. "He's exactly the kind of person I wasted 8 years of my life on. And hearing him try to diminish you just reminds me how warped his worldview is." Daniel reached across the console and took her hand. "Hey, look at me." She turned, her eyes bright with tears. "I'm not diminished by anything Marcus says. The only opinion that matters to me is yours, and Mia's, and my own. Everyone else is just noise." "When did you get so zen about everything?" 7 years of single parenting. Either you learn to let go of what doesn't matter or you lose your mind." That got a small laugh from her. "I'm glad you didn't lose your mind." "Me too." At home, Mia was full of news about her day. A substitute teacher who let them have extra recess, a spelling test she was pretty sure she aced, plans for a birthday party next weekend that she absolutely had to attend. "And we're doing a project on families," she said over dinner. "We have to draw pictures of everyone in our family and write about them." Daniel exchanged a glance with Clara. "That sounds fun. What are you going to draw?" "Well, you, obviously, and me, and—" Mia looked at Clara. "Can I put you in my family picture? Because you live here and you're here every day and you feel like family." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I would be honored to be in your family picture." "Perfect. I'm going to draw you reading to me because that's my favorite thing we do together." After dinner, after Mia's homework was done and she'd had her bath, Clara settled into the chair beside Mia's bed with the current book they were reading, a chapter book about a girl who discovers she's a witch. Daniel watched from the doorway as they finished 2 chapters, Mia asking questions and Clara answering with patience and enthusiasm. When Mia's eyes finally started to droop, Clara marked their place and set the book aside. "Good night, sweetheart," Clara said softly. "Night, Clara. Love you." The words hung in the air, simple and profound. Clara's breath caught. "I love you too, Mia." Daniel tucked his daughter in, kissed her forehead, turned on her nightlight. When he stepped into the hallway, Clara was leaning against the wall, her hand over her mouth. "She said she loves me," Clara whispered. "She does. She's been saying it to me for weeks in roundabout ways. I think she just finally felt brave enough to say it to you directly." Daniel, Claire's voice broke. I never thought I'd have this. A family, real connection, love that isn't conditional or transactional. He pulled her close, holding her while she cried quiet tears against his shoulder. You have it now. We're your family. You're ours. They ended up on the couch again, Clara curled against his side, both of them lost in thought. Sarah called me today too, Clara said eventually. The contempt motion is scheduled for next week. She thinks there's a good chance the judge will come down hard on Marcus for violating the order so quickly. What does that mean for the divorce? It strengthens my position, makes it harder for him to fight the settlement. Sarah thinks we might be able to push for a quicker resolution. How quick? Maybe another 2 months instead of 6. If he agrees to terms instead of dragging it out. She tilted her head to look at him. I know I said I needed to get my own place, but the truth is I don't want to leave. Not yet. Maybe not for a while. Then don't. But we're together now. Doesn't it feel strange that I'm living in your guest room? Daniel smiled. You don't have to stay in the guest room. Daniel Carter, are you suggesting I move into your bedroom? I'm suggesting that we stop pretending there's any reason for you to sleep down the hall when we both want you right here. She kissed him, long and slow and full of promise. Okay, but we need to talk to Mia first. Make sure she understands what's happening. Agreed. Tomorrow? Tomorrow. That night, for the first time, Clara fell asleep in Daniel's arms in his bed, and it felt right in a way that nothing else ever had. The conversation with Mia the next morning went better than either of them expected. So, you know how Clara's been staying with us? Daniel started. Yeah, in the guest room. Mia looked up from her cereal, eyes sharp. But she wasn't in there last night because I had to use the bathroom and her door was open and her bed wasn't slept in. Clara and Daniel exchanged glances. Okay, so you're more observant than we gave you credit for, Daniel said. Clara's going to be staying in my room now because Clara and I are together. Like, together. Like boyfriend and girlfriend. Yeah, like that. Mia considered this, chewing thoughtfully. Are you going to get married? Slow down. We just started dating. We're not thinking about marriage yet. But you love each other, right? Yes, Clara said. We do love each other. And you want to be a family? We already are a family, Daniel said. This just makes it official. Mia nodded, apparently satisfied. Okay. Can I still come to your room if I have bad dreams? Of course, baby. Always. Then I think it's good. Clara makes you happy and you make her happy. And she makes me happy, so everyone's happy. That's how families should work. She returned to her cereal. Are we still going to the library on Sunday? Just like that, the conversation was over. Mia had accepted the change with the easy adaptability of childhood, seeing only that the people she loved were happy. The week that followed was a study in contrast. At work, Clara was building competence and confidence, her legal knowledge returning like muscle memory. At home, she and Daniel were navigating the new intimacy of their relationship, learning each other's rhythms and habits. And in court, Sarah was systematically dismantling Marcus's attempts to maintain control. The contempt hearing was brief but devastating for Marcus. The judge listened to the recording of his call to Daniel, read the transcripts of his harassing texts, and came down hard. Mr. Bennett, you were issued a restraining order less than a week ago, and you immediately violated it. This court takes such violations very seriously. You are hereby fined $5,000 and ordered to have no contact whatsoever with Ms. Bennett, her legal representation, or any member of her household. Any further violations will result in jail time. Do you understand? Marcus's attorney tried to argue, but the judge cut him off. I strongly suggest your client learn to follow court orders. Because I have zero tolerance for this kind of harassment, this hearing is adjourned. Sarah called Clara immediately after with the news. Clara listened, thanked her, and hung up, looking stunned. He was fined $5,000 and threatened with jail if he contacts me again. Good, Daniel said. Maybe now he'll actually leave you alone. But 3 days later, Marcus proved he hadn't learned anything. He showed up at the house, not close enough to violate the restraining order, but standing across the street, watching. Daniel saw him first, standing by his Mercedes, arms crossed, staring at the house with an expression of cold fury. Clara, don't look out the window. Marcus is outside. What? She moved toward the window anyway, then froze when she saw him. He's violating the order again. Not technically. He's more than 500 feet away, but he's definitely sending a message. Daniel pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. The officers arrived within 10 minutes. They crossed the street to speak with Marcus, who apparently gave them some story about public property and his right to stand wherever he wanted. But after 15 minutes of conversation, he got in his car and drove away. One of the officers came to the door to speak with Daniel and Clara. He's right that he's not technically violating the restraining order at this distance, the officer said, but we made it clear that we're aware of the order and will be monitoring the situation. If he comes back, call us immediately. After the police left, Clara sank onto the couch, shaking. He's never going to stop, is he? He's going to keep finding ways to intimidate me, to remind me that he can get to me whenever he wants. Then we document this too. We add it to the pile, and we trust that the legal system will eventually make him face consequences. Daniel sat beside her. I know it's exhausting, but you're not alone in this fight. I'm so tired, Daniel. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of waiting for him to show up or call or find some new way to make my life miserable. I know, but Sarah said 2 more months, right? 2 more months and the divorce should be final. You can start fresh, completely free of him. Clara leaned against him. What if he never lets me be free? What if this becomes my whole life, fighting him, hiding from him, constantly afraid? That's not going to happen. He's losing, Clara. Every time he pulls something like this, it makes him look worse to the court. He's digging his own grave. 2 weeks later, Sarah called with unexpected news. Marcus's attorney reached out. They want to settle. Clara's hands trembled as she put the call on speaker so Daniel could hear. What are the terms? Clara asked. 50-50 split of all marital assets except the house, which he keeps. Full dismissal of any claims to each other's future earnings. You walk away with about $200,000 plus your car. Clara's breath caught. That's more than I expected. It's what you're entitled to. His attorney knows that if this goes to trial, the judge will see all the evidence of his harassment and controlling behavior. They're trying to cut their losses. What do you think I should do? I think you should take it. It's fair, it's clean, and it gets you out fast. No trial, no more fighting. You could have your freedom in 30 days. Clara looked at Daniel, her eyes wide. He took her hand, squeezed it. It's your choice, he said. Whatever you decide, I support it. Take it, Clara said to Sarah. I want this over. I want to move on with my life. I'll send you the paperwork. Once you sign and he signs, we file with the court and wait for the judge's signature. Then you're done. After they hung up, Clara sat in stunned silence. It's really happening, she whispered. I'm actually going to be free. You're going to be free, Daniel confirmed, pulling her into his arms. She cried then, not from sadness, but from relief, from the overwhelming weight of 8 years finally lifting from her shoulders. The next month passed in a blur of paperwork and waiting. Clara signed the settlement agreement. Marcus signed it. They filed with the court, and then they waited for the judge's signature to make it official. In the meantime, life continued. Clara excelled at her job, earning praise from the attorneys she worked with. Mia thrived with 2 adults in her life who loved her unconditionally. And Daniel and Clara grew into their relationship, learning each other's histories and hopes, building something real and lasting. On a Tuesday afternoon in late December, exactly 3 months after Clara had called Daniel in the middle of the night, Sarah called with final news. The judge signed. As of today, you're officially divorced. Clara had been making dinner when the call came. She set down the knife she'd been using to chop vegetables, her hand going to her mouth. It's done? Really done. Really done. You're a free woman, Clara. After she hung up, Clara turned to Daniel, who'd been setting the table. I'm divorced, she said, and then laughed. I'm actually divorced. He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. How do you feel? Light. Like I've been carrying a boulder and someone just lifted it off my shoulders. She pulled back to look at him. I know I said I needed to get my own place, prove I could stand on my own. But I've been thinking, yeah? What if I didn't? What if I stayed here with you and Mia? Not in the guest room, not as a temporary situation, but as part of this family. Daniel's heart expanded in his chest. Are you sure? You have money now. You could get a place of your own, have that independence you wanted. I could, but I don't want to. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to help Mia with her homework and read her bedtime stories. I want to build a life here with both of you, if you'll have me. Clara Bennett, I have wanted you for 10 years. I'm not about to say no now. It's Clara Martin again, actually. I went back to my maiden name. She smiled. New life, new start, old name. Clara Martin, he said, testing it out. I like it. Me too. He kissed her there in the kitchen, with dinner half prepared and the table half set, and it felt like a beginning. When Mia came home from school that day, they told her Clara's divorce was final. Does that mean Clara can stay forever now? Mia asked. If she wants to, yes, Daniel said. I want to, Clara confirmed. Mia threw her arms around Clara's waist. Good, because you're part of our family, and families stay together. That night, after Mia was asleep, Daniel and Clara sat on the back porch wrapped in blankets, watching the first snow of the season fall soft and silent in the backyard. A year ago, I never could have imagined this, Clara said. I was trapped in a marriage that was slowly killing my spirit, believing that this was just how life was, that I'd made my choices and I had to live with them. And now? Now I'm sitting on a porch with the man I love, in a house that feels like home, with a little girl who calls me family. I have a job I'm good at, friends who support me, and freedom I fought for. She turned to look at him. I'm happier than I've been in my entire adult life. Good. You deserve happy. You deserve all of this and more. So do you. You spent 7 years putting everyone else first, raising Mia alone, being strong for her. You deserve someone who chooses you, who sees how incredible you are. I think I found her. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. I was thinking, maybe in a year or so, when things have settled, when we're sure this is what we both want for the long term, maybe we could talk about making this official, like legally official. Daniel's breath caught. Are you proposing to me, Clara Martin? I'm saying I might want to eventually, if you'd be interested. I would be very interested, but I reserve the right to be the one who actually does the proposing when the time comes. Deal. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow accumulate on the grass, thinking about futures they'd once believed were lost to them. Inside the house, Mia slept peacefully, her family drawing pinned to her wall, 3 stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun, labeled Daddy, Me, and Clara in her careful 7-year-old handwriting. On the kitchen counter, Clara's settlement check sat waiting to be deposited, money that would give her security, that would allow her to contribute equally to the household she'd become part of, that represented her freedom and her future. And in Daniel's pocket, though Clara didn't know it yet, was a small velvet box he'd bought 3 days ago. Not an engagement ring, not yet, but a promise ring, a symbol of commitment and patience and love that had waited a decade to find its moment. He'd give it to her on Christmas morning, he'd decided, in front of the tree with Mia watching, make it a family moment. Because that's what they were now, a family. Not the family Clara had tried to build with Marcus, all surface and pretense and control, and not the family Daniel had cobbled together after loss, just him and Mia against the world. This was something new, something built on honesty and choice, and the kind of love that made people braver, stronger, more themselves. The snow continued to fall, soft and transformative, covering everything in white, a clean slate, a new beginning. And in the morning, they would wake up together, Daniel and Clara and Mia, and make breakfast and do homework and live the beautifully ordinary life that Clara had once thought was forever beyond her reach. But tonight, in the quiet darkness with snow falling and Christmas lights twinkling on houses up and down the street, Clara Martin allowed herself to believe in second chances, in midnight phone calls that changed everything, in men who waited a decade and loved without conditions, in little girls who made room in their hearts for one more person, in futures that arrived not with fanfare, but with quiet certainty. I love you, she whispered to Daniel. I love you too, he said. Always have. Always will. And that, Clara thought, was the truest thing anyone had ever said to her. The kind of truth you could build a life on. The kind of truth worth fighting for. The kind of truth that made all the hard days and scary nights and impossible choices worth it in the end. She'd walked away from a gilded cage and found herself here, on a snowy porch, with the man who saw her, really saw her, and loved what he found. She'd risked everything for freedom and discovered that freedom was just the beginning. The real gift was what came after. The choice to build something real with someone who would never try to diminish her light. The chance to be part of something genuine. The courage to believe that the best parts of her story were still being written. Clara Martin was free. Clara Martin was loved. Clara Martin was home. And somewhere across town, Marcus Bennett sat alone in his enormous empty house, surrounded by expensive things that had never made him happy, wondering how he'd lost control of a situation that had always been his to command. But Clara didn't think about him anymore, didn't wonder or worry or look over her shoulder. She just sat on the porch with Daniel's arm around her, and the snow falling soft around them, and let herself be happy. Simply, completely, deservedly happy. Because sometimes the story does have a happy ending. Sometimes the midnight call gets answered. Sometimes the waiting pays off. Sometimes courage wins. And sometimes love is patient enough to wait a decade for the right moment. This was their moment, and it was perfect.